system, and it's there, but it's not in its fully functional form.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you all want to add?
Okay, I mean, just maybe a couple of smaller points. On the website, we do have a statement of purpose, and we're working on FAQs. We did have a full set of FAQs under the old site, and we're working on porting that over. People can certainly contact us by email, and then we can give tailor-made responses to whatever questions they have. And the book which we put out is going to undergo some corrections. There are various typos and whatnot, which, by the way, we want to thank you for your input on that. And once we've made those corrections, we'll probably make it publicly available through Lulu, and people will be able to order it for themselves if they're interested. I'm looking for, I have a copy someplace.
I have one in front of me right now.
Oh, good. Well, you can maybe say how long it is and tell people what the chapters are.
Yeah, it's about 130 pages, and there are chapters that are it's kind of broken up into sections about the order and the program, then philosophical things like what is truth, and then psychology, and then Hebrew and Kabbalah, astrological, drama. It gets into some rituals and things like that. So
there you go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I really appreciated the opportunity to proof it and go through and review the material. It was very interesting.
So we anticipate having the corrections to that made within the next couple of months, and probably by end of year it'll be available.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show. And again, if anybody is interested, they should email scriba at o-m-o.org.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much.
93.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank Michael and Rasputin for being on the show. Thanks for taking the time and letting us know about what you're doing up in Southern Ontario. I think it's great that new orders are being founded and new ideas are being tried out. So everybody interested, go to www.o-m-o.org. The next interview is with Keith418. We discussed a number of aspects about Thelema. The discussion actually gets into a lot of different areas, so I'll just let you take a listen to it and let me know what you think.
We have on the phone with us again Keith418. Welcome to the podcast, Keith. 93.
93, John. Thanks for having me.
In many of your online critiques, you come out against democracy and equality and seeing people as equal and so forth. Why do you do that? Isn't every man and every woman a star? Isn't what people want and their desires? Aren't they all equal, and don't they all matter?
Well, they all matter. Whether they all matter in an equal way is an interesting question. I don't think my opinion about this is particularly important. I do think Crowley's opinion about these questions is important, and whenever anyone asks me about this, I point them back to his own writings about it and suggest that they explore those ideas. One of your readers was asking me, for example, or you, to talk about what we found transgressive in Crowley's teaching. Do you remember that email that you got, or was a response? And my original response to that, mentally was, I don't want to do their work for them. I would encourage them instead to go back through Crowley's teaching, to go back through the basic materials, and to say, what about this is offensive to modern mainstream American values? And what about this is transgressive? What does it mean to transgress? I think one of the things in the occult community, a friend of mine pointed this out to me a long time ago, and I've thought about it a lot since then, is his critique of the Temple of Set is that this is a group that wants to be evil but not transgressive. What is the difference between a sort of theatrical sense of evil in a monster movie kind of way and really transgressive? And I urge people to read Michael Aquino's Temple of Set book, his history of the Church of Satan and the origins of the Temple of Set, to get an idea about this kind of conflict. What is transgressive and what is truly evil? These are interesting questions. And to me, the Temple of Set is silly because it seems to want to be evil. It doesn't really want to be transgressive. It doesn't want to transgress against the mainstream bourgeois values that oftentimes it seems to want to embrace, the sort of Rotary Club middle-class respectability. And can you really be a transgressive organization and do that at the same time? And the reason I think it's interesting for us to look at it is I think the OTO has a lot of the same problems. Now, one of the things that Crowley did say, and I will say this, is that he was very much opposed to the idea of equality. And this comes out over and over again in his comments on the Book of the Law and in other places. He just thought it was crap. And if people are interested in exploring this, they need to read Nietzsche, first and foremost, but they also need to look at the history of American individualists and philosophers in American politics who are sort of off the beaten record, off the beaten track, people like Knock, for example, who I would recommend folks taking a look at, and others who, basically say this idea of equality is meaningless. If we're all different, we all can't be equal. And the more you push equality, the more you're ultimately pushing a uniformity, which leads to a police state and conformity and a whole bunch of other things that I don't think most of the people in the OTO really want. So they're torn between this sentimental, very Christian idea of equality, which I think is rooted in Christianity and in Judeo-Christian values in general, and the idea of inequality, which expresses itself in undemocratic organizations like the OTO and the AA. I mean, both of those organizations are not based on democracies. They're based on hierarchies which are not subject to popular opinion or popular demands. And we see the conflict that this happens in the OTO frequently when people talk about what folks want. Now, I've been looking at this a lot lately where body masters will say things online like, well, what people want is a party. Well, what people want is a social activity. Well, what people want is, less magic and more religion. And they don't want to do this. They don't want to learn that. And how do we facilitate that? And my response is, who cares what they want? What they want might not be what they need. What they say they want might not be what they really want. Crowley wanted magical revelation that was in keeping with his Buddhist values. He didn't get that. People in the OTO may want a big party, a Burning Man-like event, and that may not be what they need or what they really want or what they should have. So we need to challenge this sort of idea and value that most Americans have, that you give people what they want and the majority rules. Now, majority is not always right, and this idea that you have to give everyone what they want, it might not be true either. You bring up the idea of desire, which I think is really interesting. And desire is something I think is very individualistic and is something that people really need to sort of hone and figure out for themselves. And I don't think most of the people in the OTO are really honest about what they desire on a deep level. I don't know if they experience what they desire. I don't know if they can articulate it. And one of the things that I always liked about approaches in the 80s and some of the stuff that went on regarding new ways of working with the Authnos and Spare material was that it forced people to come up with an alphabet of desire. It forced people to scrutinize what their desires really were and to be honest about them. And that's not something that I think consumer society really encourages because you can't market to that effectively.
What about the fact that individual experiences, or that people should be striving for individual experiences with the HGA, and that the HGA, how does that relate to kind of what people want as a majority?
Right. Well, again, I mean, it's impossible to speak to that sort of question in really general terms. I think what's better is for people to start to look honestly at what they desire and to hone and give expression to their deepest desires and the things that they really, really want, and to come to terms with those issues and to face them.
Okay, well, what if the local body desires to have a party in a Burning Man situation and not do work? Well, what if that's all they desire?
If the body as a whole may want to do that, then they may decide that they aren't really interested in the Blue Equinox OTO or in Crowley's teachings about discipline and everything else. I mean, there's nothing wrong with parties provided it's balanced against the other stuff that's there. That's my understanding of his teaching is that there's a place for social activity within the organization, but that the organization's purpose isn't supposed to be subordinated to that. And when you bring this up with people, they're like, well, that's not what people want. They want this. I mean, for example, I talk to people all over the country who are very unhappy with the way local bodies de-emphasize magic and Crowley. I was talking to somebody today who was just appalled by it. And the attitude when you challenge people about this is, well, that's not what people want. Well, okay, the people who do want that may be alienated by the people who aren't really interested in Crowley or the Blue Equinox OTO or Thelema at all and are just there to have a party and meet other weirdos, or other fat people that they can be friends with because they're lonely and fucked up.
Right, and don't drug addicts, what they want are drugs, even though it's not good for them, or little children want to eat cake and ice cream all the time?
Exactly. So the idea that what everybody wants and what the majority wants is automatically legitimate, I think, has to be questioned. And if you start doing that, that's transgressive. You know, the whole idea here is what really transgresses against the values that we have. And that's what I would ask people to carefully examine the Crowley material and see the stuff that, if taken seriously, what is going to make, you know, the average functioning middle-class member of American consumer democratic society freak out. And if they're honest with themselves, they will see that there's a lot of transgressive material in the Crowley corpus. You know, one of the things that came up recently was that a friend of mine was asking me some questions about Crowley's writing, and I referred them to the Bhagavad Gita, the Scented Garden. Mm-hmm. And there's a PDF of it online somewhere, or they found a copy of it, and they were freaked out. And they said, why doesn't anyone talk about this stuff? The book is out of print. It was not published by the OTO to begin with. It was published by Titan Press. And I said, well, this is disturbing to people. This has got a lot of material in it that frightens them. And I'll never forget, one conversation I had with an OTO leader. I brought up Leia Sublime, and he said, I wish Crowley had never written that poem. Now, why would somebody be motivated to say that about Crowley's writing? Why would they say, I wish he hadn't written that?
Right, because it's something they have to reckon with, and they would prefer not to.
Right, it makes them unhappy. It transgresses against their safe, nice, happy values.
Well, but the problem is, the HGA is not a safe, nice, happy being.
But
it says things that are transgressive.
Right, but they want it to be. I see this with people all the time. I think one of your guests at one point was talking somewhere about how his HGA was his imaginary friend from childhood. So he didn't have to do any of that arduous work to discover his HGA because it was always there. It was, his imaginary friend. Done deal. And well, what is your imaginary friend when you're a little kid going to tell you? I mean, not very many of them talk like Iwas does, or say things that are going to challenge you to the extent that Crowley's HGA experience challenged him. And I think a lot of people are hoping that their HGA experience is going to replace all the stuff in the Book of the Law and in all the other Thelemic books that they don't like, and give them something that's going to make them happy. And Crowley's experience with his HGA was not a happy-making thing for him. He rejected it. He struggled against it. It caused him a huge amount of problems. One could say it was a curse as much as it was a blessing. Well, who in the OTO is running around saying, I've got my HGA experience, and it's a tremendous pain and very difficult for me and something I have to struggle and fight with? No, for them, it's a ratification and a legitimization of all of their pre-existing desires, wants, and values, which, when examined, turn out to be totally dictated by the metaphysics of the previous aeon. It's all just secular humanism, liberalism, and everyone's equal, and we're all happy, and it's this hippy-dippy, the temporary autonomous zone kind of nonsense. So I have no respect for that. I mean, if people think that's challenging and interesting and makes them happy, good, fine for them. I think it's a pile of poop. And I think that the, middle-class leaders of the OTO who don't challenge people and don't look at this stuff and see it as being transgressive and important are losers and are just missing out on the whole point of it. I don't think they get it.
Well, hold on one second. And some of the things that I've been studying that and this kind of goes back with the last guest, with Tantra, that there are these two paths that are developing in systems that have a kind of a sutra basis and a Tantra basis. And the sutra basis is kind of like if you'll look at Crowley's writings like Liber 101, the Blue Equinox stuff. This is the system, this is the rules, this is how you do it. And then on the other side, you have the transgressive material where it's about breaking the rules, about breaking the norms, about breaking all of these things. And so you have this balance that the individual has to work out to figure out where things are and where they are within these two trends, within the institutionalization and within the anti-institutionalization. And what we see is a lot of the leadership stressing so much the institutionalization part, but not even considering the transgressive or tantric part.
There may be some utility to making that division. I question it at a certain point, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there is utility in making that division. The question then becomes, they look ridiculous by just clinging to the one and rejecting the other. And my experience has been that the people who devote themselves purely to one system or the other are are idiots. That the pure tantric people who go around insisting that there can't be any system never get anywhere because they reject the very things that could help them advance. And in the same thing